On the very day of our wedding, Chenmu's childhood sweetheart was kidnapped by robbers. She called him in tears, begging Chenmu to bring 5 million in ransom to save her. I suggested we call the police immediately. After a moment's hesitation, Chenmu did just that. In the end, Xiao Qingmei was successfully rescued by the police, and the kidnappers were apprehended. However, not long after, the kidnappers' accomplices tracked down Xiao Qingmei and exacted a brutal revenge. She was savagely beaten, sustaining such severe injuries that her uterus had to be surgically removed. Everyone blamed me, saying that if I hadn't been too stingy to pay the ransom and insisted on calling the police, none of this would have happened. Chenmu was the only one who comforted me, urging me to ignore the gossip and idle talk of others. 3 years later, after I gave birth to a son, I suffered from uterine atony and massive postpartum hemorrhage, requiring emergency ICU care. Yet Chenmu directly signed the do not resuscitate order. With my dying breath, he said to me, if you hadn't insisted on calling the police back then, Wei Wei wouldn't have been targeted for revenge by the kidnapper's accomplice and had to undergo a hysterectomy. Consider this child your compensation to her. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of my wedding to Chenmu. I generously advised him to sell the house to pay the ransom. 1. The wedding was set to begin in 1 hour. Chenmu sat on the sofa in the bridal suite, phone pressed to his ear, his brow furrowed so deeply it could crush a fly. Bai Shuwei, what kind of game are you playing now? Haven't you made a fool of me enough already? A woman's intermittent sobbing came from the other end of the line. Brother Chenmu, I'm not lying this time. I've really been kidnapped. The kidnappers are demanding 5 million in ransom. Please, bring the money and save me quickly, or they'll kill me. Chenmu's expression shifted slightly, as if he was trying to gauge the truth of what he was hearing. Last month, Bai Shuwei called, saying she'd been in a car accident on the highway and was lying in the hospital emergency room. Chenmu dropped the important project he was negotiating and rushed to her side. It turned out to be nothing more than a game of truth or dare she was playing with friends while drinking. That business deal fell through. Chenmu's hope of using that project to stage a comeback was dashed. The woman continued to plead, Brother Chenmu, please save me. The kidnappers are demanding 5 million by 3 p.m. I'm so scared. I watched the scene before me with cold detachment. My fingernails were already digging deep into my palms. 2. In my previous life, it was at this very moment that Bai Shuwei contacted Chenmu to tell him she had been kidnapped. Upon learning this, I advised Chenmu to call the police immediately. First, pretend to agree to the kidnappers' demands and deliver the ransom to the location they specified. By cooperating with the police, we can round up all the kidnappers in one fell swoop. Chenmu hesitated for a moment, then did exactly as I said. While Bai Shuwei was on the call with Chenmu, the police quickly pinpointed their location. Bai Shuwei was successfully rescued. Both kidnappers were apprehended and subsequently sentenced. Afterwards, Chenmu asked Bai Shuwei why those men had kidnapped her and if she had offended someone, but she hemmed and hawed without giving a clear answer. It was obvious, however, that she was deeply uneasy. 2 months later, late one night, Bai Shuwei stumbled out of a bar, drunk. As she tried to hail a cab, a man forcibly abducted her. This time, the man didn't ask for money. Instead, he took her to a corner of the alley and subjected her to hours of abuse and beating. Bai Shuwei was severely injured, with a ruptured uterus that threatened her life. In the end, the doctors recommended a hysterectomy to save her life. After that incident, everyone around me knew I was the one who deliberately urged Chenmu to call the police. They claimed it was my unwillingness to let Chenmu pay the 5 million ransom that led to Bai Shuwei being harmed in retaliation by the kidnappers' accomplices. That's right. They don't blame the real culprit who hurt Bai Shuwei. Instead, they're blaming me, the one who genuinely wanted to help her. Chenmu always comforted me, telling me not to pay attention to what people were saying. He said he believed in my character and that I genuinely had Shuwei's best interests at heart. 3. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I had a difficult labor and gave birth to our son. Due to postpartum uterine atony, I suffered a severe hemorrhage and was rushed to the ICU. But right at that moment, Chenmu, citing an inability to afford the exorbitant medical costs, signed a form to withdraw treatment. After treatment was stopped, Chenmu came to see me, holding our child. He cradled the baby in one arm while gently stroking my hair with the other. To outsiders, it looked like he had brought our child to see me off one last time. But the words that came out of his mouth were exceptionally cruel. Do you know why you suffered from postpartum uterine atony? It's because I've been slipping a slow-acting drug into your food for a long time. My eyes widened in shock, unable to believe these words had come from him. Chenmu let out a soft, chilling laugh. If you hadn't insisted on calling the police back then, Wei Wei wouldn't have been targeted for revenge and abuse later. Her hysterectomy, it's all because of you. At least you were useful enough to give me a son. I'll raise this child with Wei Wei, and you can consider it your way of making amends to her. When you're gone, all your assets will belong to me and our son. As for your cold-hearted parents, they probably won't even know you're dead. He said he had already been seeing Bai Shuwei behind my back. He said if it weren't for waiting for me to have the baby, they would have run off together long ago. He said I had brought all of this upon myself, and that evil would be repaid with evil. I drew my last breath, consumed by grief, indignation, and bitter resentment. For Qian Yen, Shuwei has been taken by kidnappers. They're demanding a ransom of 5 million to release her. What are we going to do? Chenmu's urgent voice snapped me out of my reverie. I looked at the man who had been my husband for 3 years in my past life. We were together for 3 years as lovers, and then 3 more as a married couple, 6 years of companionship. But I remember, clear as day, the look of utter disgust and hatred on his face for me right before he died. I took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to kill him. I replied with a completely blank expression. Oh, well, go pay it then. Is there anything you need me to do? Chenmu was taken aback. Her eyes lit up with sudden hope. Nian, are you saying you're willing to pay the ransom? I shook my head, refusing outright. No, I'm not. Chenmu looked utterly confused. Then I explained. What I mean is, should I announce the cancellation of the wedding? After all, you're about to go rescue Bai Shuwei, Chenmu blurted out. But if you don't chip in, there's no way I can scrape together 5 million on my own. I let out a cold, mocking laugh. Of course I knew he didn't have 5 million, right now. I doubt he even has $500,000 in his account. Chenmu's family background was indeed quite comfortable, after his parents passed away unexpectedly. They left him a considerable inheritance. He could have lived comfortably without working a day in his life, or even 2, yet, he insisted on dabbling in business and investments like everyone else. Within a few years, he managed to squander most of his assets. At present, the most valuable thing he has left is the property set aside for our wedding. I'd estimate it's worth 6 or 7 million. 5. I shrugged helplessly. I don't have any money on me right now. You know how it is. My parents divorced when I was a kid. They both moved on to new families and don't really look out for me. The bit of money my grandpa left me, I've pretty much blown through it all. Chenmu's face was a picture of disbelief. How is that possible? He challenged. Your grandfather was one of the wealthiest businessmen around here. There's no way you don't even have 5 million, I sighed. You know as well as I do that grandpa passed suddenly from a stroke. He never had a chance to make a will. According to inheritance law, his estate naturally went to my father. I can't even come up with 100,000 right now. In reality, grandpa left 70% of his assets to me. It's just held in a trust fund. I won't have full access to that inheritance until I turn 35. Chenmu was utterly crestfallen upon hearing this. He had always boasted about being fairly well off and never showed any concern for my financial situation. In the 3 years we were together, aside from exchanging gifts, we always paid for our own expenses. All he knew was that my grandfather was wealthy and that I had a tendency to spend money lavishly. Still refusing to give up, he said, "Why don't you ask your best friend for a loan? Her family is so rich, and given how close you two are, she'd definitely lend you that amount." Shuwei's side says it has to be delivered by 3 p.m., or the kidnappers will kill the hostage. This measly sum. He makes it sound so easy. I looked at his face, full of pleading and urgency, thought it over for a long moment, and pretended to be hesitant. "Well, I'll give it a shot," I said. 6. The phone was picked up after a few rings. Lulu's voice came through the line, dripping with sarcasm. Well, what brings the esteemed Miss Chiao to call little old me? Isn't today your big day? I'm surprised you have time to remember a busybody like me. I let out an awkward laugh. I just missed you. That's all. I wanted to talk. Lulu has always looked down on Chenmu, even though Chenmu is tall, handsome, and conducts himself with humility and courtesy. But Lulu always says he's too fake and puts on an act, she said. Based on all my dating experience abroad, I can tell Chenmu is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Nian, you're too naive. Don't let him fool you. Back then, Chenmu and I were in the honeymoon phase of our relationship, so of course I wouldn't listen to Lulu's advice. I even thought it was incredibly rash of her to judge someone's character based solely on their appearance. As Lulu kept bringing it up, I snapped back at her in frustration. I'm 25, not a child. mind your own business. After that, Lulu gradually grew distant from me. Looking back now, I'm so ashamed I could slap myself. I apologized to her sincerely. Lulu, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said you were meddling. You're my best friend, I shouldn't have hurt your feelings. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before she replied, Hey, girl, I forgot about that ages ago. Do I really seem that petty to you? Lulu and I started making idle chit-chat, seeing that I hadn't brought up the loan after all this time. Chenmu was getting antsy, gesturing frantically from the sidelines. Only then did I casually steer the conversation to the main point. Lulu, I said, I'm a bit strapped for cash lately. I was hoping to borrow 5 million from you to tide me over. Do you think you could help me out? Lulu was taken aback for a moment before retorting, but didn't your last project turn a profit? I cleared my throat loudly a couple of times. Lulu changed tack. About that project you referred me to, it's just about to pay out. All my capital is tied up in it right now, so I can't come up with 5 million at the moment. Could you wait a little longer? Watching Chenmu's lips, I asked. How long? 2 weeks at the earliest, a month at the latest. At Lulu's words, Chenmu's entire demeanor collapsed. 7. Just then, Chenmu's phone rang again. Chenmu stared at the encrypted number on his phone screen, his face turning deathly pale. His hand trembled as he fumbled several times before finally answering the call. A voice, distorted by a modulator, came through the line. Mr. Chen, you have 3 hours left. If you don't deliver the 5 million on time, don't blame me for sending her to northern Myanmar. A pretty piece of goods like her, I'm sure there are plenty of buyers, and if not, well, she's got plenty of usable parts. Chenmu was on the verge of tears, pleading, Please, don't hurt her. I'll get you the ransom money on time, I swear. The kidnapper sneered, You'd better keep your word, and don't you dare call the cops. If you involve the police, you'll be picking up her corpse. With that, the kidnapper hung up the phone. Chenmu's eyes were bloodshot. Coming to his senses, he fell to his knees before me with a heavy thud. Nyan, please, think of something. You can get 5 million. Your grandfather has been in the business world for decades. He must have connections. I'm begging you. Please save Shuwei. After a moment of silence, I offered him an idea. Borrowing money isn't that easy these days, especially 500,000, not just 500. How about this? You mortgage our marital home, and I can help you connect with some potential lenders. Chenmu fell silent. That marital home was all the property he had left. If he puts it up as collateral and can't repay the loan when it's due, he might genuinely end up homeless. I didn't pressure him, just calmly reminded him, we have 3 hours left. Signing the contract and going through the legal process with a lawyer will all take time. He hesitated for a long time, then gritted his teeth and replied, Fine. Get in touch with them right away. I'm going home now to get the property deed. Chenmu left in a great hurry. I tore off my wedding veil, flung open the door to the lounge, and strode onto the stage of the banquet hall. To the assembled guests, I announced, I'm sorry, everyone, due to an urgent matter, the wedding between Chenmu and myself is cancelled. Please consider today a simple gathering. All monetary gifts will be returned in full. A wave of gasps and murmurs rose from the crowd. Without looking back, I walked purposefully out of the banquet hall. 8. Chenmu mortgaged the house and successfully secured a loan of 5 million, for the remaining 500,000, he scraped together just enough from the cash in his own accounts. I was the one who put up the 4.5 million, I just had a friend act on my behalf, so Chenmu never knew I was the one behind it. Right before setting off to pay the ransom, he hesitated. He looked at me with a shifty gaze, gauging my reaction. Nyan, I've mortgaged our wedding apartment. You're not angry, are you? I smiled. How could I be angry? It's a matter of life and death. You should go, quickly. Chenmu looked down at the oversized suitcase, which was packed full of cash. He hesitated, then asked, Do you think the kidnappers will actually let him go after we pay the ransom? Should we call the police? My phone rang at the most inopportune moment. I gestured to Chenmu and pointed at my phone. I need to take this. Just a moment. A good 10 minutes passed. I hung up the phone, and Chenmu was still there. He licked his dry lips and offered a stiff explanation. Shuwei and I grew up together. I see her as a younger sister, so. I didn't want to hear his excuses and began to hurry him along. I know, I believe you. No need to explain. You'd better get going, or it'll be too late. Chenmu left, dragging his feet and looking back every few steps. I watched his retreating figure and let out a cold laugh. I hope he doesn't come to regret today's decision. 9. By the time Chenmu returned with Bai Shuwei, night had fallen completely. The two of them were a complete mess. Bai Shuwei was otherwise fine, just a bit pale. Chen Mu had been nearly stripped bare, his face bruised and swollen, a tattered shirt of unknown origin tied around his waist, but he paid no mind to his own state, continuing to comfort Bai Shuwei in a soft, gentle voice. "It's over now, Wei Wei, we're home, no one will ever hurt you again." Bai Shuwei wept with tears streaming down her face like raindrops on pear blossoms. "Brother Chen Mu, you're the only one in this world who truly cares for me." I called my parents. And they actually said it didn't matter to them whether I lived or died. Sob. The two of them were lost in their tender moment for over 10 minutes before they finally noticed me standing in the middle of the living room with my suitcase. Watching them coldly, Chen Mu seemed oblivious to the fact that I was moving out and ordered me, "Qian Yan, go fill the bathtub with water, let Wei Wei have a nice, hot soak. She's really had a terrible fright today." After a moment's thought, he added, "While Wei Wei is bathing, go and simmer some longan, red date, and goji berry soup. It's soothing for the nerves. She can have some after her bath. So I'm just the hired help now, am I?" When I didn't respond for a long while, Bai Shuwei looked timidly at Chen Mu. Does sister not want me here? If that's the case, I can go back to my rented apartment." "Absolutely not. What if you run into trouble again on your own?" Chen Mu quickly reached out and grabbed Bai Shuwei's arm as she made a move to leave, but the moment he turned, the shirt tied around his waist fell to the ground. I turned my head away. I couldn't bear to look. 10. Chen Mu flushed with embarrassment and quickly ran back to the bedroom to put on his clothes. When he came out again, he was muttering curses under his breath. Those two kidnappers were completely unhinged. They took the ransom. And on top of that, they stripped me of my watch, belt, and the clothes I was wearing. And then they beat me up. It's just despicable." As he said this, he touched the bruise at the corner of his mouth and winced, sucking in a sharp breath from the pain. Looking at the utterly disheveled Chen Mu, I had to admit, his love for Bai Shuwei was the real deal. It wasn't until he walked into the living room that Chen Mu noticed the suitcase beside me. All my other belongings had been moved out that afternoon. "I'm just back to pick up some documents and valuables." Chen Mu looked astonished. "Where are you going with your luggage so late?" "A business trip." I didn't want to waste my breath explaining. I just nodded along. "Yes, I'll be away for a while. You all sort things out here. I'm heading out." A look of understanding dawned on Chen Mu's face. He pulled me aside and lowered his voice, saying, "Then you'd better get the money together quickly. If I can't pay back the 4-5 million within 3 months, our house will belong to someone else." I rolled my eyes internally. "So, he expects me to foot the bill for saving his childhood sweetheart?" I replied coldly. "I can't promise you anything on that. We'll just have to play it by ear." Chen Mu was clearly unhappy with my answer. He was about to say something more, but I impatiently shoved him aside. "You reek, go take a shower. I'm leaving." Chen Mu lifted his arm to sniff it, then took a step back with an embarrassed look. 11. Bai Shuwei officially moved into Chen Mu's home. She made a big show of posting about it on social media, flaunting the room he decorated for her, the breakfast he made for her every morning, and all the luxury goods and jewelry he gave her. I liked every single post. The reason I have Bai Shuwei on WeChat goes back to 6 months ago, when she had just gotten divorced and returned to the country. Chen Mu went to welcome her back. He ended up getting completely wasted when Bai Shuwei brought him home. She insisted on adding me on WeChat. She said if something like this happened again, she could get in touch with me. However, she never reached out to me. I would occasionally see their intimate interactions on social media. Between her and Chen Mu, I once confronted Chen Mu, demanding to know the true nature of his relationship with Bai Shuwei. Chen Mu's reply was remarkably forthright. He said Bai Shuwei was a childhood friend, like a sister to him, now that her marriage had fallen apart. He was just showing a little extra concern, that's all. More than a month slipped by without my noticing. During this time, I neither returned to Chen Mu's place nor showed my face to him. I didn't reply to any of the messages he sent. He finally began to realize that something was off. The butler at my grandfather's old house told me that Chen Mu had come looking for me several times. However, they all told Chen Mu that I had never returned and that they had no idea where I had gone. That day, while I was having dinner, I received a call from an unknown number on my phone. It was Chen Mu calling. He was frantic and got straight to the point. "Qian Yan, transfer me 300,000. I was treating a client to dinner and realized my card didn't have enough when the bill came." "What kind of dinner was it?" "A single meal costing 300,000. I flat out refused. "Sorry, I don't have that kind of money on hand. You'll have to ask someone else." Chen Mu seemed rather irritated. "How is it possible you don't even have 300,000? Last time, when we needed the ransom for Shuwei, you said you had nothing, and I let it slide. Don't think I don't know you've secretly invested in several projects behind my back, Qianyan, you need to understand. I am your husband. If you keep hiding things like this, what kind of marital bond do we even have left? I couldn't help but let out a laugh. You're my husband, pray tell, have we gotten a marriage license, or held a wedding ceremony? Chenmu was left speechless, choking on his words. After a long pause, his voice suddenly rose in accusation. So, you've been ghosting me all this time because you're throwing a tantrum over the cancelled wedding, Qianyan, I'm truly disappointed in you. His train of thought left me utterly speechless. Bai Shui's saccharine voice came through the line. Chenmu, darling, are you ready to check out? I still want to pop next door to Chanel and look at some dresses. Ha, so you were out shopping with your little sweetheart. I hung up the phone immediately. 12. Chenmu paid for Bai Shui's purchase with his credit card. That day, he maxed out the remaining over 800,000 yuan limit on his card, in Bai Shui's latest social media post. Handbags, dresses, jewelry, and shoes were spread out across half the bed. The caption read, "So happy, got these for my 25th birthday from my big brother." Chenmu commented below, "Happy birthday, I'm glad you like it. Ha, let's see if he's still this eager to please when he has to pay back that 4.5 million in a couple of months. Must have inherited his grandfather's business acumen. All the projects I've invested in are turning a profit, for as long as I can remember. I've lived with my grandparents. My parents had a marriage of convenience, with no real emotional foundation. After I was born, they fought like cats and dogs almost every day. My father kept a mistress, and my mother had a boyfriend, fearing the loss of face if word got out. The elders from both families ultimately had no choice but to agree to their divorce, allowing them to go their separate ways in search of happiness, with my parents' failed marriage serving as a cautionary tale. My grandfather didn't interfere much in my romantic life, so when I met Chenmu, his appearance and personality checked almost every box on my list. I chose him without a second thought. It's a shame you can know a person's face, but never their heart. Lulu invited me out for drinks at a bar, saying I'd been cooped up at home every day lately and needed to get out and unwind. We went to her usual spot. We had barely taken our seats when a few handsome guys came over. They greeted Lulu with great enthusiasm, some even presenting her with exquisitely wrapped gifts. I was utterly astonished by her incredible popularity with the opposite sex. She burst into laughter, doubling over. Qianyan, how can you be so naive? They're all male models here. I'm always extremely generous with my spending. Did you really think they'd be this enthusiastic otherwise? You should learn a thing or two. I was left speechless. My grandfather was very strict with me and never allowed me to go to places like nightclubs or bars. Even after I became an adult, he would still check my bank statements every month. But the bar had a great vibe. After downing a Macallan, I got all woozy, grabbed the male model's hand, and insisted on reading his palm. The booth not far away seemed to be in the midst of a wild celebration. Many people stood up to look in that direction. I, too, staggered to my feet. I didn't recognize the others at the booth, but the two people locked in a passionate kiss were none other than Chenmu and Bai Shui. The people nearby were egging them on. The bar was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of alcohol and desire. Several minutes later, their long, lingering kiss finally came to an end. As the colored strobe light swept across my face, my eyes met Chenmu's. His body went rigid, and he instinctively pushed the woman he was holding away. Bai Shui turned her head and looked at me. She was taken aback for a moment, then broke into a provocative smile. 13. Chenmu pushed through the crowd and walked towards me. Nian, what are you doing here? His voice was still husky with lingering desire. I gestured to the drinks on the table. Just having a drink with friends. Chenmu followed my gesture and looked toward the booth, and then she saw a few men who were drop-dead gorgeous. Lulu had just gone to the restroom. Chenmu stared at the tall, handsome men, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Did you order all of these? Qianyan, you're a married woman now. Have some decency. I let out a derisive snort. What's this? The magistrate is free to burn down houses, but the common people aren't allowed to light their lamps. Before you say another word to me, you might want to wipe that lipstick off your mouth. Chenmu's expression went blank for a second, but he still stubbornly defended himself. Craning his neck, it's not the same as what you're doing. We were just playing a game. Kissing Shui was the penalty for losing. You, on the other hand, came here looking for a man. I rolled my eyes. So, if you lose the next game, is the penalty checking into a hotel room? Your games sure are. Intense. Not giving him a chance to speak, I continued. Oh, and by the way, next time, don't go around calling me a married woman or anything. I'm currently single. The day the wedding was called off was the day our relationship ended. Chen-mu stared at me in disbelief before finally spitting out, "Fine, don't you dare regret this." He went back to Bai Shui's side once more. As if to spite me, he deliberately acted intimate with Bai Shui. Would I regret it? Not unless I've lost my mind all over again. 14. In the blink of an eye, the day arrived for Chen-mu to repay the 4.5 million debt. Of course he couldn't pay it back. He had been counting on our relationship, thinking I would never stand by and do nothing if he was truly desperate. After all, for me, a single project payment is easily more than 5 million, but the truth is, he couldn't even get in touch with me. Left with no other choice, he went to his friends to borrow money, but after asking around, he only managed to borrow a few $100,000. As the saying goes, you help someone in an emergency, not in chronic poverty. The one property he has left isn't even his own. How can anyone expect him to turn things around and repay the debt? In the end, Chen-mu had no choice but to move into a hotel with Bai Shui. As for me, I listed the house I received with an agent and sold it for over 6 million. After receiving the payment, I transferred a 10% commission to my friend for their trouble. 15. I ran into Chen-mu at my friend's company when I was there to discuss a partnership. He had come to borrow money. With his credit card bills and loan repayments due every month, he couldn't scrape together the cash he needed. My friend politely turned him down. He was standing there, awkwardly unsure whether to stay or go. When I pushed open the door to my friend's office, seeing Chen-mu sitting on the sofa, I thought to myself, what lousy luck, I didn't want to stick around. I told my friend something came up and that I'd catch him next time. I had just stepped out of the office building. Chen-mu called out to me from behind, "Qian Yan." I didn't stop walking. But he caught up to me. He grabbed my wrist, his eyes bloodshot as he demanded, "Tell me, was this all your scheme? Why are people saying you're the one who bought that apartment?" I wrenched my hand away from his. "Chen-mu, get your head straight. You're the one who mortgaged the house to bail Bai Shui out. I just helped you find the right people, and you're the one who maxed out your credit cards buying her luxury gifts. What does any of that have to do with me? Shouldn't you be happy now? You saved the person you wanted to save, and you won her favor. What's a little hardship compared to that?" Chen-mu stared at me, his shoulders slowly slumping in defeat. Despair filled his eyes. "So, you were already prepared to leave me?" I let out a cold laugh at the sight of the broken, sorrowful man before me. Where does he get the nerve? He spent his entire fortune to save another woman, and he still expects me to be blind enough to stay with him. I told you, the moment the wedding was called off, whatever was between us was over for good. With that, I turned and walked away without a backward glance. 16. Bai Shui is pregnant. Chen-mu listed his watch and a few other items of some value on a second-hand website. The Lamborghini he drove was sold off too. After paying off his credit card debt, he bought a 2-bedroom apartment and got engaged to Bai Shui. Life was manageable, but who could have imagined that when Bai Shui was 6 months pregnant, she was kidnapped by criminals again. This time, the ransom demand wasn't too high. Just 1.5 million. It represented every last bit of Chen-mu's assets. Chen-mu couldn't make a decision. On one side were his wife and child. On the other, the scant remains of his entire fortune. But at the same time, he simply couldn't understand why Bai Shui, of all people, kept getting kidnapped. After much deliberation, he decided to call the police. After setting up the operation, the police had one of their officers pose as Chen-mu to deliver the ransom. The kidnappers were subdued. When Chen-mu rushed in, Bai Shui was sitting in an outdoor chair, eating fruit. It was only after the interrogation that we learned both kidnappings were staged by Bai Shui herself. The first kidnapping was Bai Shui's attempt to buy her own freedom. Bai Shui's former husband from her time abroad was a core member of a criminal syndicate, involved in all sorts of shady and sordid dealings. She returned to her home country to escape her husband's control, but the man demanded she pay her full ransom before he would let her go, and he sent 2 men to follow her. After returning to China, Bai Shui racked her brains trying to get money. She borrowed from every relative and friend she had, eventually sold her parents' house, and even stole the life savings of the elderly couple. Still short of the full amount, she set her sights on Chen-mu. I suspect that in the previous life, those 2 kidnappers didn't tell the truth because they were afraid of retaliation from the organization. The second kidnapping happened purely because Bai Shui lost money gambling online, and the debt collectors came knocking, so she tried to pull the same trick again, but she didn't expect Chen-mu to call the police. Bai Shui was sentenced to 16 years in prison for committing fraud involving an exceptionally large sum of money. 17. After the child was born, they were placed in Chen-mu's care. Unfortunately, before the child's first birthday, they were diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. Chen Mu sold his house and took his child from doctor to doctor, seeking treatment. I saw him again just as I was wrapping up a business meeting with a partner. Having had a few drinks, I decided to walk back to my place. It wasn't too far anyway. As I reached the park, I saw the back of someone handing out flyers for swimming lessons. The back of Chen Mu's t-shirt was soaked with sweat, and he kept lifting his arm to wipe the beads of perspiration from his forehead. Some of the flyers he handed out were politely declined, others were tossed aside carelessly. Forcing him to bend down and pick them up again, in the middle of it all, his phone rang. Lowering his voice, he pleaded, "Just give me a little more time. I'm working as hard as I can to pay it back, but I can't come up with that much money all at once." I don't know what was said on the other end, but his voice rose sharply. "Go ahead and sue if you want. I don't have any assets in my name anyway. If you keep calling me, I won't even pay back the remaining principal." I didn't acknowledge him. Nor did I kick him while he was down. To me now, he is a complete stranger. 18. A few years later, I found myself in a new relationship. While at the hospital for a premarital checkup, I ran into Chen Mu on the first floor, who was registering with a child in tow. He saw me walking arm in arm with my fiancé, and a shadow passed over his eyes. He gave a bitter smile. "I can see you're quite happy." I nodded with a smile. "For that, I have to thank you for your mercy in not marrying me." The corners of his mouth turned down in a grimace that was half smile, half sob. My fiancé tactfully walked a little further away, waiting for me at a distance. Chen Mu gazed into the distance. "Xiao Wan, you know, a few days ago I had this incredibly vivid dream. I dreamt that you and I got married, and you even gave birth to my son." The smile slowly faded from my face as I turned a cold stare towards him, and then, Chen Mu averted his eyes. His lips trembled slightly, but no words came out. "I'll say it for him. After I gave birth to our son, I hemorrhaged and needed emergency care in the ICU. That's when you signed the DNR form." Chen Mu whipped his head toward me, his eyes wide with shock. "And I'm sure your dreams will explain perfectly clearly why I hemorrhaged in the first place, won't they?" His face a mask of horror, Chen Mu began backing away, step by step. How could you possibly know that?" I slapped him hard across the face. Chen Mu stared at the seething hatred in my eyes and froze completely on the spot. After a long moment, he covered his face, sank to the ground, and began to sob. I shot him a look of utter contempt. She strode purposefully towards her fiancé. The end. Story 2. At the class reunion, he showed up successful and accomplished. With his beautiful girlfriend in tow, she said, "If you hadn't let go back then, you'd be Mrs. Fu Corporation by now." Sitting across the way, he held his girlfriend and replied coolly, "That's all in the past." The crowd, always eager for drama, started egging them on. Under his gaze, I quietly covered the scar on my wrist and forced a weak smile. "Yes, the two of us, we've been over for a long time. If I remember correctly, it was Tang Jia who ended things, wasn't it?" While his girlfriend was in the restroom, the classmates started gossiping. "I am Tang Jia." Fu Jin sat across from me, a faint smile on his lips, yet his eyes were utterly cold. This was our first meeting in 6 years. Since the breakup, everything felt a bit too sudden. I only came because the class monitor said Fu Jin wouldn't be here. I never expected to run into you here. Today's Fu Jin is a great success. A distinguished young entrepreneur in the city and a top-tier talent returned from overseas. Dressed in a sharp suit, he cut a handsome and imposing figure. The watch on his wrist alone was worth a fortune. Everyone held him in the highest esteem. In contrast, I was a shadow of my former self. "It's true, she was the one who initiated the breakup." Fu Jin replied to everyone's questions with a calm and composed tone. "Everyone has their own assumptions. It's all the same old story, that I'm a gold digger, can't handle hardship, bet on the wrong person, and lost everything." Tang Jia. "I heard the guy you ended up with got locked up, right, and you're stuck with his debts. So, you're here at the reunion to ask for money, is that it?" Amidst the crowd's jeers, Fu Jin's calm, deep eyes remained fixed on me. Not uttering a word, I offered an awkward smile and gave no reply. The door swung open as Fu Jin's girlfriend walked back in. Sensing the strange atmosphere, she asked with a smile, "What happened while I was gone?" Breaking his earlier silence, Fu Jin gently took her hand. "It's nothing, just catching up." She sat down gracefully, her gaze fixed on me, a smile lifting the dimples at the corners of her mouth. "Fu Jin has mentioned you to me. If he hadn't let you go back then, you'd be Mrs. Fu of the Fu Group by now." A glint of schadenfreude appeared in the eyes of many onlookers. Back in those days, the Tang family was at the height of its power. Wherever I went, I was the center of attention. surrounded by admirers, that envy wouldn't simply fade with time. On the contrary, years later, it would become their excuse to kick me when I was down. Fusion broke the awkward silence, his voice cool and leaving no room for argument. That's all in the past. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the big shot didn't want to dwell on the subject, and they quickly changed the topic. His girlfriend raised her glass to me and said, "Thank you for letting him go. You simply must come to our wedding." I quietly covered the scar on my wrist and uttered a hollow, "Congratulations, why didn't you explain it to him?" On the phone, my best friend Shachio was venting her outrage on my behalf. The class reunion ended early. I stood there in the cold wind, bundled in my coat, and let out a puff of warm breath. "He has a girlfriend." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "He has a girlfriend?" Shachio asked. Disbelief in her voice. "Yeah." Students drifted away in small groups. The glow of the streetlights refracting on the snow like shattered glass. "What a shame, after you finally got to see him, after trying for so long." Xiao, "No one will wait for you in the same place forever." Some words, if not spoken in the moment, only serve to add disgust when said later. They serve no other purpose. The cold wind stung my eyes, and I blinked back the ache. I give up, even after all these years of struggle, clawing my way out of the mire. Hoping to meet him again with some dignity. "It's too late now. Alright, we'll talk when you get back." The temperature had dropped below zero just before the spring festival. Taxis were impossible to find, and after standing there for just a short while, my hands were frozen stiff. The phone screen displayed, "Now in queue." The sharp click of high heels sounded from behind, accompanied by a woman's voice, soft as water. "Ah Jen. The snow is so beautiful, it's cold outside. Go wait in the car first, I'll be there in a moment." Fusion's voice was highly distinctive. "Then hurry up." As the woman passed by, she gave me a meaningful look. She then walked a short distance away and pulled open a car door, her movement inadvertently revealing the bracelet dangling from her wrist, a glaring sight. It was the Fu family heirloom. I once wore it on my own wrist, but when we broke up, I had someone return it to Fu Zhen, so she's not just my girlfriend, she's my fiancé. The crowd had all dispersed, leaving just him and me. "The car I ordered hasn't arrived yet." Fusion stood behind me the whole time, not saying a word. They stood there in silence, their shadows merging into one under the streetlight. My mind drifted back to that year, to the night we broke up, when Fusion got into a car accident on his way to see me. His friend called, his tone sharp and unfriendly. "Brother Fu is in the hospital. Is his life in danger? So you wouldn't have come if it weren't for me. Please, take good care of him." Tang Jia, he got the spot to study abroad. He's going to make something of himself sooner or later. Why couldn't you wait a little longer? Are you that desperate for money? You could never repay him in 100 lifetimes for all he's done for you. Have you forgotten all of that? His friend was practically breaking down on the phone, just short of calling me an ungrateful wretch. The phone was suddenly snatched away from me and slammed down. You could say I was the one who abandoned him. It's only natural that he hates me. "How much do you owe?" Fusion's cold voice pulled me out of my memories. "None of your business." I took a gulp of the cold air. My throat, already raw from the alcohol, seized up in pain, and I was suddenly racked by a fit of coughing. The frigid air felt like it was tearing through my windpipe, a sharp, agonizing pain. I doubled over, bracing myself against a lamppost. The liquor I'd just drunk churned violently in my stomach, and the coughing brought tears streaming down my face. Fusion stood beside me, watching with a cold gaze. The taxi slowly pulled up in front of me, and the driver leaned out, heading to Wanha Mansion. Yes, bracing my hands on my knees, I stood up, took a breath, and reached for the car door, when suddenly someone grabbed my arm and yanked me back. I stumbled into Fusion's arms before I could react. "What were you doing there?" he asked. Wanha Mansion is an exclusive, affluent neighborhood. They don't just let anyone in. I made a clumsy attempt to push Fusion's hand away, but he caught my wrist instead. The searing heat of his skin pressed against mine, seeping straight into my heart. I struggled a couple of times but couldn't break free. Looking up at Fusion's inscrutable, somber expression, I asked, "What is it you want to say, Mr. Fu?" He pressed his lips together, his dark eyes deep and calm, unreadable. A cold wind howled, tousling my hair. I curled the corner of my mouth into a bitter smile and voiced his suspicion. "You think the money I earn is dirty too, just like everyone else, don't you? 50,000 a month, is that enough?" Fusion cut me off, his face cold. "What do you mean?" A layer of mockery finally surfaced in Fusion's eyes. "Aren't you short on money? 50,000, 100,000, if it's not enough, you name the price." I suddenly raised my hand, and the sharp crack of a slap pierced the night. A vivid, five-fingered imprint appeared on Fusion's face, a woman's startled cry rang out in the distance, and she flung the car door open, rushing out. "Mind your own business. And don't overstep your bounds," I left with those words. Getting into a car and driving away. "Did you hit him?" Xiaoqiu poured me a glass of hot water. "Yeah, he wanted to be my sugar daddy." Curled up on the sofa, I endured wave after wave of stomach cramps as I slowly drank the water. After a moment, I suddenly turned and ran to the bathroom to throw up. Xiaoqiu patted my back. "You know you have a weak stomach, and yet you still drink." I caught my breath, wiped the water droplets left around my lips after rinsing, my throat burning. After all these years of liking him, was it worth it? I looked up, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My lashes were wet, my dark hair clung damply to my forehead, and my complexion was somewhat pale. Xiaoqiu's grumbling drifted over from far away, too faint to make out clearly. "If you hadn't been so heartless and broken up with him, he wouldn't be where he is today." I thought of Fusion's fiancée again. Compared to me, she had an extra radiance and brightness about her, I vaguely remember. Many years ago, I was like that too. It's just that later, I fell too hard. By the time I crawled out of the ditch, everything had changed. After Xiaoqiu finished her shift at Wanhe Mansion, we walked hand in hand back to our rented apartment. I suddenly got a call from Fusion's brother, Tang Jia. "If you're in a tight spot, I can help you find a job." I stayed silent, waiting to hear what he would say next. "They're getting married next month. Zhang Xiaohe is a good person. And her family background is decent too. I won't bother him anymore. You have my word." He was silent for a moment, offering a futile explanation. "We just want Fusion to have a better life." Every single one of my old friends, without exception, sided with Fusion. After hanging up the phone, Xiaoqiu's eyes were rimmed with red. "They don't understand anything." "It's okay. Since I needed to stay in town a while longer, I found a job not far from home." During the interview, the HR manager asked skeptically, "Do you have depression?" "That was in the past. I'm fine now. And I have a doctor's note to prove it." Several previous companies rejected me during their background checks because of this. This company was relatively small, and I received the job offer that very evening. I thought the class reunion would be the last time Fusion and I ever crossed paths. To my surprise, 3 days later, Fusion was parachuted into our company as my new boss. And my desk was relocated right outside Fusion's office. "I refuse." "Fine," Fusion said coldly without looking up. "Submit your resignation to HR." I let out a bitter laugh. "You're firing me just because I won't switch seats." His pen paused, finally deigning to acknowledge me. He looked up. "I'm merely presenting you with options." "What? Did you think I wanted something from you?" I choked up, remembering how Xiaoqiu had argued fiercely over a bit of rent last night. I forced a smile and said, "Mr. Fu, with your noble character, I naturally have nothing to fear." Fusion gave a slight nod. "Thank you. Close the door on your way out. Also, turn your chair away from me. I don't want to see your face." For the rest of the time, we had almost no interaction. A week later, the company had a team-building event. Since I was the new hire, I was pressured into drinking too much. "Xiao Tang, if you don't drink, we'll have to dock your pay. Don't worry, if you get drunk, we'll take you home. It's all women here. What's there to be afraid of?" The manager smiled as he urged me to drink. Amidst the crowd's jeering, I downed the final glass of the night and collapsed onto the table, completely out cold. The next day, I woke up in a large bed. The bright sunlight was blinding. I pushed myself up to sit, and the cover slipped away, revealing the soft bathrobe wrapped around me. I paused for a moment, then got up and walked out. In the bright living room, Fusion was sitting with his legs crossed, reading the morning paper, also wearing a hotel bathrobe. Seeing me come out, he lifted his eyes and gave me a casual glance. "You're awake. Breakfast is on the table. Eat something and then go back to sleep for a while." A wave of horror washed over me, and my face turned deathly pale. "Did we?" Fusion tossed the morning paper casually onto the coffee table, slightly pulling open his collar to reveal a suggestive love bite. "Unfortunately, you were the one who initiated things last night." I was thunderstruck. My memory of the previous night was a complete blank. "Impossible." Fusion placed a contract in front of me, bearing my thumbprint. The gist of it was that I would be his mistress, and he would pay me 100,000 yuan each month. "There's no way." I pressed that. "Oh really?" Fusion chuckled softly. "Are you sure about that?" Under his earnest and unwavering gaze, I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Ignoring my obvious discomfort, he produced a voice recorder. "I accidentally recorded your monologue last night, Miss Tang. Would you like to hear your own sordid thoughts?" A violent shudder ran through me. as if I'd been plunged into an ice cellar. A wave of immense shame washed over me. These thoughts felt vile enough when kept hidden. Now, spoken aloud and held as evidence, it was as if I had committed a crime. Fusion's brow was furrowed low, his eyes shadowed and unreadable. Coveting a married man, huh, Tang Jia, how about we let them hear this recording? My hands were clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. Are you getting back at me? Yes, he replied, his tone casual and dismissive. You never intended to let me off easy back then. Why should I make things easy for you now? Two options, either honor the contract, or I release the recording to the public. The clock in the corner ticked, each beat syncing with my pounding heart. Hammering against my eardrums, my lips were chapped. I looked up, numb, then release it. Under his icy gaze, I said numbly, Fu Zhen, I won't be the other woman. Fu Zhen stared at me intently, then gave a faint smile. Tang Jia, who do you think you are? Do you even have a choice? I found my clothes in a messy heap on the bathroom floor. In stark contrast, Fu Zhen's clothes were neatly hung on the rack by the door. The sight stung my eyes. With a sigh, I quietly changed and left the hotel. Xiaqiu called, her voice strained. Tang Jia, they're demanding 500,000. The sky was a dull, leaden gray, with no sign of the sun. To pay for my treatment. Xiaqiu hadn't managed to save much, and my own savings were pitifully small. They said if we don't pay, they'll expose your secret, and they won't tell you where your aunt's belongings and ashes are. I'll try to get an advance on my salary and borrow a bit from others. I should have it all together by next month. Okay. After a moment's hesitation, I dialed a number. It took a while for the call to be answered on the other end. Miss Tang, is there something you need? I let out a sigh and said, Dr. Jiang, I'm sorry to bother you. Jiang Yanzhou seemed to be very busy on his end. After some maneuvering, he finally reached a quiet spot and asked patiently, are you in some kind of trouble? I took a deep breath. Could you lend me 400,000? This was the first time I'd ever asked to borrow money. After saying it, my whole body felt like it was on fire. A sudden commotion came from the other end. Dr. Jiang, emergency surgery, understood. I hadn't held out much hope to begin with, and was prepared for him to just hang up. At the last moment, Jiang Yanzhou tersely said, send me your account number, I'll wire it to you today. With that, the call ended. The sky remained a dreary gray. The cold, monotonous dial tone suddenly felt warm. In the evening, my manager tapped on my desk and said, we're having dinner with a client tonight, you're coming along. Just a few hours earlier, I had asked him for an advance on a month's salary. Combined with the money I borrowed and my previous savings, I barely managed to scrape together 500,000. As I entered the private room, I saw Fu Zhen. His tall figure moved with ease as he exchanged pleasantries with the crowd. The light refracted from the crystal chandelier traced the handsome lines of his profile. The manager gave me a gentle nudge forward. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. Mr. Fu, is this someone from your company? Fu Zhen glanced over casually and said with a smile. Yes, a new hire. What kind of new hire needs the personal attention of Mr. Fu? Quite the looker. Amidst the casual chatter, everyone took their seats. The manager seated me next to Fu Zhen and whispered, be sharp tonight, step in and drink on his behalf when you need to. The others inquired tactfully, Mr. Fu, is your new colleague here a drinker, or not? Before Fu Zhen could answer, the manager hastily replied, he can drink, he certainly can. He slid the glass toward me. Let's start with a toast. Fu Zhen smiled without a word, gently tapping the table. I picked up the glass, held my breath, and downed it in one go. The harsh liquor burned its way down my throat, a fiery trail that churned and roared in my stomach. The crowd cheered, ready to press their advantage, but Fu Zhen deftly changed the subject. Now, where were we? Let's continue. The atmosphere was lively, and many tried to toast Fu Zhen. He declined, citing a stomach issue, and didn't drink a drop. In the end, the manager found every excuse to pour all that liquor into me instead. Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore and headed for the restroom. The faucet was running. I was retching uncontrollably, my hair coming loose and falling into the sink, becoming soaked in no time. After sending the text to Xiaqiu, I was completely drained. I slumped over the sink, head down, eyes shut, breathing heavily. From outside the door came the sound of steady, unhurried footsteps. The door opened. I thought it was just some woman coming to use the restroom. To my surprise, it was Fu Zhen's voice that came through, calm and collected. Can't hold on anymore. I mustered all my strength, pushed myself up, and staggered past him to head out. But Fu Zhen grabbed my arm and dragged me back. A large hand settled on the nape of my neck. It was scalding hot. Let go of me. Stomach acid burned my throat, making every word painful. Fusion effortlessly dragged me in front of the mirror, forced me to face it, lifted my chin, and sneered, "Take a good look at yourself, going out like this. Aren't you afraid of catching the eye of someone with ill intentions?" In the mirror, my eyes were glistening, my cheeks flushed, with strands of hair disheveled around my ears, and my collar was undone. Through the mirror, Fusion's deep gaze roamed brazenly over my body. I closed my eyes, my whole body trembling slightly. "Who could be more scheming than you?" Fusion let out a soft laugh, his lips brushing my ear. "Come back with me tonight, alright, get lost." He ruthlessly sealed my mouth with his, greedily stealing the very air from my lungs. Under the influence of alcohol, his blood surged through his body like molten lava, a frenzied torrent. Light blurred into shapeless masses, and water droplets seemed to be viewed through a filmy veil. Each drop fell like acid, searing his heart. It was an agony beyond endurance. A cold sweat broke out over me as I feebly beat against him. It was as if I had been dragged back into those dark days. I stared in despair at this dazzling, colorful world, feeling utterly out of place. "Fusion, won't you just let me go? I am falling." In silence, crashing hard into the bottom of the well. It must have been painful, but I can no longer feel it. "Tang Jia." Fusion was calling my name. That look in his eyes was gone, the one that seemed to wish I were dead. He was panicking. I couldn't even tell if the man before me was the younger version of him or the man he was now. I said, "Fusion, I never want to see you again." The fever hit me like a freight train. My mind was a fog, my whole body ached like hell, and I shivered uncontrollably, curled up under the covers. The north wind howled outside the window, and in my feverish haze, I dreamed of those days long past. I rested my head on Fusion's back and asked, "Fusion, what would you do if I died?" Carrying me steadily as he walked, he soothed me gently. "Don't talk nonsense, it's just a fever, you'll be fine after the shot." "Hey, can you afford this? Shots are expensive." "It's fine, how can it not matter? How many jobs are you working?" Fusion didn't answer. He set me down at the nurse's station, crouched in front of me, and said earnestly, "As long as you're safe and sound, nothing that happens to me matters." Huddled inside my thick down jacket, I said hesitantly, "Once Mom and Dad stop fighting, I'll ask them for my allowance to pay you back." Fusion gently stroked my hair, his gaze tender. "Trust me, we'll have money someday." But I didn't live the safe, peaceful life he had hoped for me. The night Fusion left for the interprovincial competition, I came home and pushed open my parents' bedroom door. My father was shielding another woman in his arms. My once glamorous life began to crumble from that point on. It was followed by my parents' violent arguments, my father's sudden disappearance, and the Tang family sinking deep into debt. One late night, that group of middle-aged debt collectors showed up at our door, the swaying light overhead, the men's excited shouts, the dull pain and sickening feel on my skin, and my mother's heart-wrenching curses all swirled into a chaotic mess, churning violently in my mind. The scene shifted as if someone had hit fast forward. My mother was hounded to death by her creditors, found in the bathtub. Xiaqiu found me, barely clothed, and took me to the distant southern city. On a gloomy, rainy day, I huddled in a corner of the hospital, dressed in mourning clothes, my expression utterly desolate. "She has a family history of depression. Are there any other relatives?" Xiaqiu looked at me with concern. "She has a boyfriend, he's away in another city for a competition. You should notify him to come back." The doctor's words were laced with medical jargon. "Her suicidal ideation is pronounced, and the treatment will be challenging. She'll require constant supervision for the next several years. The family needs to prepare for a long, difficult road ahead." By that point, my own mental state was in no condition to support me through filing a police report, gathering evidence, and seeking justice. Xiaqiu and I were like a pair of stray dogs with no home to return to. We fled the place we'd grown up in, utterly defeated and stripped of all dignity. On that very same day, Fusion's name topped the list of competition winners. He had secured the opportunity to study abroad. The phone rang. When I answered, all I could hear was the howling wind on the other end. "Tang Jia." Fusion's voice was impossibly gentle. "I've kept my promise. In 3 years, I will marry you." I watched the iron gate slowly close, and with it, my way home vanished forever. "Fusion, I don't think I can be with you anymore." I choked back a sob, tears silently tracing down my cheeks. He held his breath. "Why?" I opened my mouth to speak, but in that moment, I hesitated. His future is bright. Could I really be so selfish as to trap Fusion's remaining years in that perpetually rainy southern city? Outside the window, the girl wept uncontrollably from behind the fence. The boy's face was a mask of heartbreaking numbness and disgust. I saw the moment love vanished from his eyes. It was utterly devastating. The wind lifted my hair, revealing the dark bruises of bites and finger marks on my neck. I wiped my tears and said, "Fusion, take care of yourself, let's just call it quits." The steady beep of a monitor sounded in my ears. The evening sun filtered through the slats of the blinds, casting a beautiful, gilded sheen over the sofa nearby. I blinked, the nightmare receding as I sat up. A man sat on the sofa, quietly peeling an apple with his head bowed. His pale, slender fingers worked with deft precision, and in no time, a whole, peeled fruit emerged, smooth and clean. It was Fusion. Hearing the noise, he looked up, met my gaze, silently rose to his feet, and pressed the call button. The doctor entered quickly, shone a light into my pupils, and after confirming I was fine, turned to Fusion and said, "She's not getting adequate nutrition. In her daily diet, she should focus on increasing her protein intake." Fusion nodded, /thank you, the door closed. He walked to the bedside and handed me the apple, / don't worry about anything right now, just focus on getting better, / I didn't answer it. Instead, I got out of bed and went to rummage through the cabinet by myself. My phone was gone. There were no clothes to wear out, either. He just let me carry on like that in the hospital room. "Fusion, what are you trying to do?" I stood barefoot on the floor. A shaft of sunlight pierced the room, and the window pane reflected my pale, haggard face. "You don't know what I'm trying to do." Fusion placed the apple on the nightstand, pulled out a tissue, and meticulously wiped his hands clean. "I want you." He sat there in the light, his dark eyes fixed on me without a hint of concealment. His gaze was scorching and humiliating. Trembling, I clenched my fists. "Fusion, you can't do this to me." Fusion stood up, closed the distance between us in a few strides, and looked down at me. He gently smoothed my hair. "Why can't I? I'm in love with someone else. Please stop bothering me." "Is that so?" There wasn't a trace of a smile on Fusion's face. He kept my face, leaning in until his lips stopped just a centimeter from mine. I couldn't break free. The moment I turned my head away, I shut my eyes, and my body gave an involuntary shudder. A cool, crisp laugh escaped Fusion's lips, his voice washing over her. "Tangjia, you're lying." The private hospital was situated in the suburbs, with an endless stretch of forest visible outside the window. I couldn't leave, and I couldn't reach anyone. I had tried asking the doctors and nurses for help, but they said there was nothing they could do. Fusion came every day. Most often, it was in the evening. He would arrive, looking travel-worn, just to talk with me for a while. I was very resistant to any intimate gestures from him, and Fusion never pushed the matter. Lately, I've been dreaming about the past. Back then, Fusion's name was constantly on my lips. I would say, "Fusion, you're destined for great wealth and fortune." Fusion sighed quietly. "What flavor of milk do you want today?" "Banana." In the end, to buy me banana milk. Fusion, the top student, skipped class for the first time and got caught by the teacher. Later, we went to college. Rumors started spreading around campus about him and the school beauty. I rode the subway for over a dozen stops, then sat crying outside the boys' dormitory. In the dead of night, Fusion got dressed and hurried downstairs, gently wiping away my tears. He said, "Don't cry. If you want me, I'm yours. From now on, there will only ever be you. That's not how you confess your feelings." He paused for a moment, then held me tightly. "I love you." Back then, we probably never could have guessed that this is how things would turn out more than a decade later. Tomorrow, I'm getting married. Outside the window, the sun hadn't fully set yet, its lingering warmth still in the air. Fusion's voice pulled me back from my distant thoughts. "Did you have something to say to me?" Cradling the half-finished glass of milk, I stared at his face, lost in thought. I suddenly understood the reason for my frequent dreams lately. I was saying goodbye to the Tangjia and Fusion of the past. The news about him and Zhang Xiaohe is on TV every day. A perfect match. A match made in heaven. That was the future we once dreamed of. But what right does Tangjia have now, with all that baggage weighing her down? "Congratulations," I said. "May you have a son soon." Fusion paused while peeling the apple. The knife nicked his fingertip, and a bright red bead of blood quickly welled up. He was taken aback for a moment, then pulled out a tissue to press against the cut. He looked down and gave a soft chuckle. "It's fine, it's just a formality with her. Do you want a child?" "I have no objections." "Fusion, can we just let this go?" I suddenly felt very tired. "Let's both keep some dignity." Fusion stopped peeling the apple, tossed it back into the fruit basket, and stared at me intently, a hint of a mocking smile on his lips. "Just let it go, just like that. On what grounds? You started this. In the end, you just say you're bored and walk away without a care. What does that make me? A dog?" I closed my eyes, willing away the sun's glare. Then I'll give it all back to you. Fusion froze. What did you say? I gazed at the setting sun. If you want to make my life hell, I can just die. Suddenly, someone grabbed my chin and forced my head around. I met Fusion's furious gaze. Tang Jia, are you out of your mind? If you wanted to die so badly, why didn't you just do it back then? I can't remember when he left. That night, Fusion's brother, Zhang Heng, who was also a friend of mine from many years ago, burst through the door. Tang Jia, what did you promise me? His barrage of questions completely threw me off. Do you have any idea how much Fusion stands to lose if the engagement is called off? You're an adult now. Can you stop being as willful and reckless as you were back then, always expecting Fusion to clean up your mess? Can't you think about him for once? What's wrong? What's wrong? Zhang Heng let out a bitter laugh, shouting at me. Fusion is calling off the wedding because of you, and you have the nerve to ask me what's wrong. My ears were ringing. I sat there in a daze, my mind completely blank. By publicly breaking off the engagement, what does that make me? A homewrecker? Zhang Heng dragged me roughly out of bed. You're coming with me. Weren't you so good at this back then? Bored of me? Found someone new? You have so many excuses. Just pick one. Zhang Heng. Tang Jia. Zhang Heng was trembling with rage. If you hadn't left, would any of this have happened? His furious roar echoed in the blizzard. The howling north wind froze all my senses. A deafening buzz filled my ears, drowning out all other sound. His eyes held a hatred I had never seen before, as if someone like me deserved to die. Zhang Heng, he's the one who won't let me go. Zhang Heng's expression turned cold. Once this is done, I'll see you out. The office building was ablaze with light in the dead of night. Zhang Heng pulled me inside, but it was too late. The press conference had already begun. Fusion sat composedly under the spotlight. I heard the reason you called off the engagement was a third party's involvement. He handled the reporter's question with effortless ease. Miss Zhang and I had some differences of opinion and parted ways amicably. Zhang Heng's face turned ashen. He gripped my wrist tightly, forbidding me from moving. But according to sources, you've rekindled things with your first love. Fusion remained unruffled. It's all just rumors. If there are no further questions. This press conference is now concluded. The moment he stood up, someone suddenly shouted, "She's here, that's her." Every camera in the room instantly swung in our direction. I was caught in the spotlight, flustered and stunned. Reporters swarmed in, and within seconds, I was completely surrounded. A barrage of questions followed. What is your relationship with Fu Zhen? Did you really break up someone's marriage? The sound of camera shutters clicked incessantly. Fu Zhen's smile froze. He stood up and pushed through the crowd toward me. No, I didn't, I feebly protested, but my voice was quickly drowned out by their intense curiosity as questions came one after another. There's a new scoop, a reporter cried out in surprise, holding up a phone from which my own voice emerged, a tearful, drunken slur, like a feverish whisper. Ajahn, I love you. It was a voice recorder. A wave of dread washed over me. I used to think nothing could possibly make my life any worse. When the storm finally hit, it utterly destroyed me. Isn't this just the other woman, shameless? The hushed whispers of the crowd felt like a slap across my face. The color drained from my face. The recording had nailed me to the pillar of shame. I'm sorry, Zhang Heng. Get her out of here. Fu Zhen pushed through the crowd, a look of panic crossing his face for the first time. My vision went white. I heard the person read out, word by deliberate word, father in debt, mother committed suicide. Suffers from severe familial hereditary depression, locked up in South City Psychiatric Hospital for 5 years. Isn't that just mental illness? A single stone stirred up 1,000 waves. The crowd erupted in an uproar. What's a lunatic doing out here causing trouble? Are you insane? Why don't you just go die? Fu Zhen's footsteps halted abruptly, and he looked up, his gaze meeting mine, shocked, stunned, unbelievable. I sat helplessly amidst the clamoring crowd, feeling the blood slowly run cold within me until my entire body was chilled to the bone. Tang Jia. Fu Zhen was calling my name, his voice trembling. I knew what was coming next. I was just waiting calmly for the guillotine to fall, to utterly destroy my life. She was also assaulted. This was the final sentence of the anonymous tip-off. The moment he heard it, Fu Zhen's face turned deathly pale. 9. Fu Zhen's perspective. Ever since that day, after returning from the office, Fu Zhen hadn't spoken a single word. The blinds had been closed for 3 days, and no light could penetrate the dim room. Missed calls had completely taken over his phone screen. He didn't tap on a single one. Time seemed to have stood still for him. Fu Zhen sat there, head bowed, utterly lifeless. He still remembered the man's icy tone when he took Tang Jia away. He said, "We all hoped she would live, Mr. Fu. With your ruthless efficiency, you effortlessly rendered all our efforts futile." Xiaoqiu was stopped by the security guard outside, screaming at him, Fu Zhen, don't you know she'll have an episode if she doesn't take her medicine? Locking her up like this is no different from murder, depression, psychiatric hospital. These terms, like countless sharp needles, churned recklessly in his mind, pulling viciously at his nerves. Zhang knocked on the door, then finally pushed it open a crack and stood in the doorway. Brother, are you feeling any better? Why? Fu Zhen's voice was hoarse, the dull ache in his chest was agonizing. Zhang fell silent for a moment. I'm sorry, at the time, I didn't think it was necessary to investigate. So, the information was fake, wasn't it? Fu Zhen's voice was barely a whisper. Zhang, while you were telling me she'd gone through several boyfriends abroad. Tang Jia, she was locked away in the Nan City Psychiatric Hospital. I'm sorry, brother, I didn't know. The explanation felt hollow and inadequate. He knew he couldn't blame Zhang entirely. If only he had probed a little deeper back then, perhaps things wouldn't have come to this. Fu Zhen had no energy left to listen to Zhang defense. Xiaoqiu pushed the door open and entered, ignoring the secretary's attempts to stop her. The harsh light made Fu Zhen squint. But he did nothing to stop it. The secretary apologized profusely. I'm sorry, Mr. Fu, I lost track of him. Leave us, said Fu Zhen. The secretary carefully closed the door behind them, and the room sank back into dimness. Xiaoqiu just stood there, as if she wanted nothing to do with him. Mr. Fu, there are some things I can say now. The window was open just a crack, letting in a bone-chilling draft. Fu Zhen sat there, motionless, simply listening in silence. Wrongdoing always comes back to haunt you, sooner or later. Last year, on Tang Jia's birthday, I jokingly asked her who she loved most in this world. She said, first was her mother, and second was Fu Zhen. Fu Zhen closed his eyes, feeling those words chill him to the bone. Back then, she had just recovered from her illness. Taking just one small pill a day was enough for her to live like anyone else. So this year, to sort through her aunt's belongings, I brought her back. Xiaoqiu's eyes reddened. She always said the breakup back then was so messy, so undignified. This time, she just wanted to meet you properly again, or even just catch a distant glimpse of the great entrepreneur you've become. That would have been enough, because she knew she was no longer worthy of you. Fu Zhen, was she really not worthy of you? Do you know how that competition spot was really secured for you? Fu Zhen's hand slowly clenched. As if he was seeing the truth, a truth devastating enough to shatter him. The position had already been prearranged for someone else. It was Tang Jia who wrote the letter of complaint, demanding fairness and transparency, that finally put the opportunity in your hands. But in doing so, she made a lot of enemies, so much so that later, after her father disappeared, she and her mother faced relentless harassment from many people. An invisible hand seemed to tighten around Fu Zhen's throat. The pain so sharp he couldn't breathe. She was bullied. Is that why? Xiaoqiu went on. You were away in another province for a competition and didn't call home for about a week, so you probably had no idea that all hell had broken loose here. The Tang family was ruined. Her father ran off with his mistress. A mob of debt collectors camped outside their house every day, threatening Tang Jia and her mother's lives. Her mother took her own life, leaving Tang Jia behind. She was bullied. And that's when she had her breakdown. At her worst, I didn't dare take my eyes off her for a second. She was so tormented she was barely recognizable. Xiaoqiu stared fixedly at Fu Zhen. When you had that car accident, Tang Jia begged me through her tears to let her die. How do you expect her to move on? Fu Zhen's face turned ashen. He closed his eyes. The memories from these past few months tormented him relentlessly. He had tacitly allowed the manager to get Tang Jia drunk and have her delivered to his room. He coaxed her into spilling her secrets while drunk. Then, in a deranged act, forged a legally worthless fake contract, all just to revel in her anguish and torment. He subjected her to repeated humiliation and cruel games. In the end, with obsessive determination, he had her confined to a private hospital in the suburbs. Xiaoqiu came to see him many times, but he refused every meeting. He asked if she was insane, and demanded to know why she hadn't just died back then. Tang Jia's eyes grew increasingly vacant, often fixed on him, motionless. He mistakenly believed she still loved him then, but looking back now, Tang Jia was silently demanding how he could have treated her so cruelly. Why didn't you tell me? Xiaoqiu broke down in tears. How do I even begin to explain? She was sick. Just staying alive was a struggle. The only thing she could do was to make sure the people she cared about weren't dragged down with her. She valued your education above all else. That competition was your chance to turn everything around, an opportunity she fought tooth and nail to get for you. She just wanted you to be okay. Fu Zhen, did she deserve to die? Did she deserve to die? The words landed like a sledgehammer, crushing Fusion's heart. He was the one who harassed her, tormented her, and took pleasure in her misery. He was the one who, knowing her upbringing, used a contract to humiliate her, and he was the one who deserved to be damned. We tried many methods to rekindle Tang Jia's will to live. In the end, we found only one thing worked for her. Fusion suddenly didn't dare to listen any further. Xiaqiu said with a bitter smile, "Your name, she will always remember her big entrepreneur." When I left back then, I joked with Xiaqiu that I would never come back to this place again. It just goes to show. You shouldn't tempt fate. I'm sick again. Nanxing is only a bit drier in the winter. In previous years, it was always freezing rain, but this year, for the first time ever, it's snowing. The doctors and nurses were chatting and said, "It's a bitter winter this year. TSK, the Earth's climate is becoming less and less suitable for human survival. The new year is almost here." Outside the window, the tree branches are completely bare, not a single leaf left. I pressed my face against the window pane, my breath fogging up the glass. There's someone down there. He stands there every day. Isn't he cold? Xiaqiu walked past, holding a cup of warm milk, her expression blank. Oh, really? I suppose he isn't. She hasn't been in the best mood lately. Even Dr. Jiang is the same way, so much so that I've been tiptoeing around every day, afraid of setting either of them off. Xiaqiu paused, realizing she might have startled me, and softened her tone. Drink your milk, then take the medicine in an hour. Dr. Jiang said he's taking you out to build a snowman tonight. I took another look at that person, feeling like I'd seen them somewhere before. Xiaqiu pulled the curtain shut for me. Stop staring, you'll go blind. Oh, I got back into bed, took my medicine, and then leaned against a pillow to play a game. The sound of Xiaqiu and Dr. Jiang talking drifted in from outside. Shortly after, he pushed the door open and came in. I quickly hid my phone, sat up straight, and said, "I've taken my medicine." The sharp scent of disinfectant instantly filled the room. Jiang Yanzhou's gaze swept over me before finally settling on my face. "Miss Tang, I'm not going to scold you for playing games." My face flushed bright red as I slowly pulled out my phone. "How did you know I was playing a game?" "I play it too." I recognized the background music. After washing his hands and taking off his white coat, Jiang Yanzhou looked at me through the mirror with a slight smile. "Aren't you going to get dressed? I promised to take you to build a snowman." He's in the thoracic surgery department at the same hospital. I first met him on what seemed like an autumn day. The weather had finally cleared up. I crouched down, reaching through the fence to pick up a ball of yarn that had suddenly appeared outside. Jiang Yanzhou passed by and looked down at me. I was panting heavily from exhaustion. "Excuse me, could you pick that up for me?" He glanced up at the sign on the courtyard gate and said, "According to the rules, you are not permitted to touch anything hazardous." Seeing that I hadn't moved, he asked again, "What are you trying to do?" "Cat's cradle." Jiang Yanzhou glanced at the time and crouched down. "All right, I'll play with you, but I'll take the string with me when we're done." His lunch break was short. I quietly reached my hand through the fence and played with him for a little while. Just as he was about to leave, I said, "Thank you." We ran into each other a few more times after that. He was very busy and didn't pay me any mind. Then one day, he showed up again, pulled out the string, and said, "Sorry, I've been swamped lately." After that, he started talking to me. "You don't say much, do you?" "No, I can't really talk much." "Why not?" "I'm not well. I probably don't have anything cheerful to say, and I shouldn't dump my emotional baggage on others." Jiang Yanzhou just stared at me in silence. After that, he started coming around more often. Sometimes, he seemed utterly exhausted. I tried learning a few jokes to tell him, and each time, Jiang Yanzhou would look at me with such gentle eyes. He asked, "Tang Jia, what is your wish?" "I hope everyone can be happy, including myself." I quickly put on my gear, waited for Jiang Yanzhou to put on his down jacket, and then he took my hand as we went downstairs. "There's a security door every few steps here. He's the only one who can get me out of here." Under the night sky, the snow fell thick and fast, quickly turning my hat white. Jiang Yanzhou handed me a small shovel. "Don't overdo it." "Got it." The cold air inexplicably lifted my spirits, and I took a stroll around the frozen fountain, shovel in hand. As I turned, I suddenly saw Fusion standing not far away, his eyes bloodshot and his chin covered in stubble, just staring at me. "Fusion," my voice was soft, tinged with surprise. Fusion's lips moved slightly. "Jia, I was wrong. In the past, I would have asked with proud defiance, 'What exactly did you do wrong?' Now, I just held the snow shovel, lowering my head with a hint of awkwardness. "It's fine, I've been through too much hardship. All my rough edges have long since been worn smooth." The wind and snow howled through the dark night. Fusion slowly approached, crouching down in front of me, his voice strained. How could you be fine, Jia? Please, say something to me. Okay, I thought for a moment, then said earnestly, I wish us good health in the new year. In that instant, all the color drained from Fusion's face, tears welled up in his eyes as he trembled. Please, don't do this to me. I touched his face, it was cold, icy cold, so, just like in the old days. I cupped his face in my hands and said earnestly, I had hoped to find a dignified way to see you one last time, but I've made a complete mess of it. I'm sorry, it's my fault, said Fusion. If I had only, I was the one who chose to leave your life. I can't blame anyone else. I spoke slowly, with a touch of sadness. For the class reunion, I asked the class monitor. I only went because he said you wouldn't be there. I don't know why he lied to me. I just wanted to hear some news about you. To see if you were doing well. Fusion broke down in uncontrollable sobs. I'm sorry, it was me. I did it on purpose. I see. I smiled, a bittersweet feeling stirring in my heart. Jia, I'm sorry. I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. Fusion held my hand, his gaze finally falling on the scar on my wrist. You don't need to apologize. I never wanted to force you to stay, only for us to end up years later, living in hardship. Dredging up the past in every argument to tally who owed whom more. Gently, I brushed a snowflake from his eyelashes. Ajin, seeing you achieve so much, it truly makes me happy, but I promised I'd make money for you to spend. Fusion held my hands, his voice soft. What's the point of any of it without you? I blinked, my nose red from the cold. See, this scarf cost over 100. I have enough money to get by. The light in Fusion's eyes faded completely. We can't go back, can we? He asked, his voice trembling. Ajin, you have your own life to live, and I need to walk my own path. I won't be going back to Beijing. How could anyone easily forget such hurtful words? People have long memories. I've been branded with shame. If I were to return, every step I take from then on would feel like walking on knives. That would be 10,000 times more painful than letting go of a relationship. Fusion took a soft breath, caught my hands, and just like in the old days, warmed them up again. About the recording, I'm sorry, I lured you into saying those things. I didn't touch you that night. My eyes grew hot. Fusion, then apologize to me. Say you're sorry. He was in agony, greedily etching my face into his memory for one final farewell. I'm sorry. I gave his shoulder a gentle pat, but in the end, I never did speak the words it's okay. Fusion, may you find peace and happiness in the years to come. The snow fell heavier and heavier from the sky. I turned and trudged forward with all my might, my body buffeted and swayed by the wind. The howling wind and snow behind me grew fainter. I couldn't tell if it was the sound of the wind, or Fusion's sobbing. Jiang Yanzhou stood under the dim, yellow glow of the street lamp, hands tucked into the pockets of his camel-colored coat. In the faint light, one could just make out his sharp, handsome features and his focused gaze. I walked closer. As if he hadn't noticed a thing, he asked, see anything? I brushed the snow off my hat brim, looked up, my eyes a little red. Dr. Jiang, thank you. A few days later, I saw Fusion's figure in the entertainment section of the news. He's lost a lot of weight. In the interview, he told the media everything he had done, holding nothing back. He forced me. That recording was also made under his direction. At the same time, he also posted a copy of the agreement. The signatories were him and Zhang Xiaohe. After a 2-year engagement, they parted ways amicably, achieving a mutually beneficial outcome. They never really intended to get married in the first place. That evening was the date specified in the agreement for holding a press conference to announce the dissolution of their engagement. This incident dealt a devastating blow to Fusion's company, causing its hard-earned reputation and standing to plummet. Some time later, Zhang Hing called me. He said, I'm sorry, Tang Jia, I owe you an explanation. He admitted he had misjudged someone. Zhang Xiaohe acted on a selfish impulse and exposed my situation. Those creditors who had previously extorted 500,000 from me, unable to reach me after I was taken to a private hospital by Fusion, turned around and sold the information to Zhang Xiaohe for double the price. He also mentioned being very concerned about Fusion's work performance and asked if I could go back. My answer remained the same. I've said all I can say, the rest is out of my hands. 3 months later, my condition stabilized, and I was ready to be discharged from the hospital. Warm sunlight bathed my skin, and outside the window, spring was in full bloom. The familiar scent of disinfectant hit me again. I knew Jiang Yanzhou had arrived. Got anything to eat? I've been busy all day. Spare a bite for a starving man. He's been so busy lately, he's always scrounging for food at my place. I unwrapped the woolen scarf, revealing the still warm, steamed red bean buns nestled inside. Jiang Yanzhou took them without ceremony, tore open the packaging, and dug in with gusto. I just kept staring until he asked with an amused look, "What are you looking at me like that for? You are very easy to please." After finishing his meal, Jiang Yanzhou asked, "Have you ever thought about settling down here?" "Why do you ask?" "Well, it's like this, I have an apartment that I'm looking to rent out." I thought for a moment, "Are you really that short on money?" Because he genuinely seemed sincere. "I don't have much income right now, so I probably can't afford expensive rent. I'm very affordable," Jiang Yanzhou said with a straight face, spinning a yarn. "With no neighbors around, I get scared being alone." I blinked. He seemed to be trying to pull a fast one, but I wasn't entirely sure. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, a gentle spring breeze lifted my spirits. A long-lost smile finally appeared on my face. While crossing the street, I forgot to check the traffic light, and Jiang Yanzhou grabbed me by the scruff of my neck, dragging me back without a hint of mercy. I stumbled right into his arms, completely caught off guard. He took my hand and didn't let go. Yeah, I'm chasing you." His voice was soft and casual, the corner of his lips lifting slightly, as if he'd just commented on the nice weather. Thump, thump. In the distance, a child was shaking a toy drum, babbling and playing. Thump, thump. It was the beating of my heart. My voice trembled, yet I bravely lifted my head to look at Jiang Yanzhou. "I've loved someone for so many years, I'm not sure." The wind tousled Jiang Yanzhou's hair, his gaze gentle. "Miss Tang, I've also loved someone for many years. Give me a chance." At that moment, my eyes grew a little misty. "I'm not a good match. I've been ill, and my health is." "Miss Tang, you once said you wished for everyone to be happy, including yourself." Jiang Yanzhou blinked. "I hope your wish comes true." A gentle breeze stirred, sunlight broke through the treetops, coming to rest upon his brow. The spring I once thought was beyond reach had, without my noticing, arrived in full bloom. Its colors rich and vibrant. 13. Fusion's perspective. In the winter of the following year, Zhang Xiaohe's company declared bankruptcy. Those who had bullied Tang Jia were also sent away by Fu Zhen. After weathering several crises, Fu Zhen's company finally made a comeback. That day, Fu Zhen sat alone in his office for a long time. Heavy snow was swirling outside the window, and the car lights below stretched into a continuous, glowing stream. It had already been half a month of continuous work for him, and it felt like a lifetime ago. It suddenly came back to him. It had snowed on this very day a year ago. Tang Jia made an appearance at the class reunion. The moment he saw him appear with Zhang Xiaohe, his eyes were filled with shock and panic. In the time that followed, he dreamt of that scene countless times, and in those dreams, he made changes. Over and over again, he called off the engagement in advance, and when the manager tried to drug her, he called the police. He didn't force her to drink. Nor did he say a single harsh word to her. Just as Tang Jia had anticipated, he was met with a dignified reunion. Tang Jia returned, curling up in his arms late at night to recount the past, her grievances spilling over in tears. Fu Zhen held her, kissed her, comforted her, and then proposed. Later, they had a home together. He and Tang Jia took their wedding photos. In the photo, she was smiling beautifully, her fingers interlaced with his. Each time he woke from the dream, he lay alone in bed, listening to the clock's pendulum ticking steadily onward. Only then would he realize that time marches on. But Tang Jia would never again appear in the rest of his life. She was gone, completely and utterly. On that snowy night in South City, Tang Jia wished him peace and happiness for the rest of his life, her gaze sincere and serene. She said she wasn't coming back. She was saddened by the lack of a proper reunion. Her eyes were red as she spoke. Because he had hurt her, she decided to leave. There were no words of blame or bitter reproach. That simple wish for his peace and happiness in the years to come was like a gentle knife, plunging deep into his heart, leaving an ache that would never fade. Years of irregular hours had left him with a chronic stomach condition. When it flared up, the pain was excruciating. That night, he woke from a dream again, lying on a cold bed with a sliver of a pale moon outside his window. He faintly remembered that watching the moon with Tang Jia felt like a lifetime ago. A sudden, intense longing for Tang Jia struck him, and he booked a flight to Nanjing the very next day. A year later, setting foot in this place again, the weather was exactly the same. The wind howled, and the snow fell thick and heavy. Pedestrians hurried along the road. Following the address, Fu Zhen found an apartment building. Dusk was falling, but no lights came on in the second-floor unit. Fu Zhen stood waiting in a corner. Half an hour later, Tang Jia's voice came through, gentle and earnest. Their tomato brisket stew isn't any good. Next time, buy some brisket and I'll make it for you. Xiaqiu likes it too. Invite her over. Fu Zhen instinctively looked over, and that familiar figure suddenly filled his vision. She was wearing a little white hat, or perhaps it was a little pink one, or a little gray one. In any case, covered by the snow, it was just white. Her figure had filled out a bit, and she no longer stumbled or swayed as she walked through the snow. Beside her stood a tall figure, wearing glasses, his gaze resting on her with a constant, gentle warmth. He lifted his gaze slightly, his eyes settling on Fu Zhen, and then went completely still. The two men stood facing each other through the wind and snow, neither saying a word. Hey, Jiang Yanzhou, are you even listening to me? The tone was just as familiar, only this time it was directed at someone else. Jiang Yanzhou averted his gaze. I heard you. You want to make braised beef with tomatoes, but last time you burned the pot. I haven't bought a new one yet. Tang Jia hung her head dejectedly. Oh, sorry. Jiang Yanzhou patted the hat on her head, as if patting an adorable polar bear. You head home first. The kid hasn't been fed yet. Where are you going? To buy a pot. What about the brisket? I'll get that too. In such a hurry. Yeah, I want it for tonight. Tang Jia scurried into the stairwell. Only then did Jiang Yanzhou look over. Having nothing else to say, Fu Zhen offered a simple, congratulations. Jiang Yanzhou smiled. Thank you. In truth, he knew Fu Zhen had misunderstood. The sun was the cat he and Tang Jia raised, but Jiang Yanzhou had no desire to explain. When he brought Tang Jia down to build a snowman last year, he had already given him a chance. In any case, it was over between Tang Jia and him. They should each go their own way and find peace. As for her condition, stable, Jiang Yanzhou said bluntly. She has a good temperament, doesn't get angry easily. She's a wonderful girl. Fu Zhen knew she was doing well, because he knew what Tang Jia looked like when she was truly happy. Jiang Yanzhou's gaze, sharp and appraising, cut through his glasses. Mr. Fu, how many years have you known her? 14 years exactly. You know her better than I do. Her birthday's coming up, and I want to get her a gift. Snacks. Puffed snacks are best. She doesn't like chocolate. Fu Zhen blurted out without a second thought. Jiang Yanzhou gave a formal, businesslike nod. Thank you. 14 years to the day. You know her better than I do. These words were Jiang Yanzhou's way of expressing his displeasure with him. If you knew, you'd understand why I loathed Tang Jia with every fiber of my being. Why, in the days that followed, she was subjected to such relentless torment. Fu Zhen, a clear voice cut through the howling wind and snow. Fu Zhen suddenly turned his head and looked over. The face he had longed for day and night had just burst into his view, utterly unexpected. Even the curve of her smile was exactly as he remembered it. Tang Jia stood holding an umbrella, with another one cradled in her arms, her eyes wide with astonishment. What brings you here? A pang shot through Fu Zhen's heart as he saw the clarity and peace in her eyes. She had already let go. He was silent for a moment before saying, I was here on business, just passing by. I ran into Mr. Jiang, so we chatted for a bit. Are you passing by the neighborhood? Tang Jia was a bit puzzled. Jiang Yanzhou asked, why did you come back down? Remembering something, Tang Jia handed the umbrella over. The snow was coming down too hard. I came down to give you this. Didn't want you to catch a cold. As she spoke to Jiang Yanzhou, the corners of her mouth lifted slightly, her gaze warm. The sight was a sharp sting to Fu Zhen's eyes. Would you like to come in for a while? Jiang Yanzhou asked politely. Fu Zhen smiled. No, thank you. I have a flight tonight and I'm pressed for time. Tang Jia pulled her coat tighter, suddenly remembering something. Wait for me, she said. With that, she turned and ran into the building. Jiang Yanzhou, his face expressionless, followed her up. Fu Zhen waited downstairs for a while as the snow fell heavier and heavier. The sky was a dull, oppressive gray, weighing heavily on the heart. The stomachache started up again. Zhang Heng called, bro. His words trailed off, left unspoken. Your test results are back. It's stomach cancer. Fu Zhen stood motionless. It was unclear if he had even heard. He looked up at the vast, swirling snow and simply said, I see. Then he hung up the phone. As if nothing had happened, he continued to wait, his gaze fixed on the entrance to the stairwell. A warm beam of light reached out from within, falling onto the snow and casting a trapezoid of illumination. A moment later, Tang Jia came down alone. Jiang Yanzhou had bundled her up like an unwieldy cotton ball. Clutching a small red box, she trudged over with effort and handed it to Fu Zhen. I baked these cookies myself. Take them for the road. Fu Zhen took them, suddenly remembering how Tang Jia had loved to bake many years ago. Back then, they were still pretty awful, with a distinct eggy smell. All the failed batches ended up in his stomach. She has absolutely no talent for cooking. Fu Zhen also declared that Tang Jia was henceforth banned from the kitchen. In contrast, I am a shadow of my former self, Tang Jia said with great sincerity, /thank you for your donation, /. Fu Zhen knew that their organization was helping people with mental health issues and those facing difficult living circumstances. That's why she donated every month. She kept only a small portion for her own living expenses. Fu Zhen replied, "You're welcome." He stared at her face and said, "It's cold, you should go back. I probably won't be coming again." Tang Jia smiled, "How could that be? For future award ceremonies, we'll still need to invite you." Fu Zhen's throat tightened. And he said nothing. She turned around, her snow boots crunched on the snow. Just before stepping inside, she looked back and called out, "Fu Zhen." Fu Zhen looked up instantly, and his heart suddenly leapt to life. He waited for her to say something. He saw Tang Jia smile at him. "Happy New Year." A perfectly ordinary New Year's greeting. Even health and happiness were gone. Fu Zhen's heart settled back into silence, standing in the icy wind. He replied, "Happy New Year."